Wow. Congratulations, everyone. I guess our pressure worked. Better late than never, because apparently AOC in the floor of Congress on the congressional floor finally said the G word after so long. AOC is using the word genocide to describe the crimes taking place in Gaza. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to Case Study QB. He uploaded the full 10-minute and 10-second interview that she did with Jake Tapper on State of the Union. Okay, whatever, State of the Union. But it was rather interesting on how she is wording it, because on the congressional floor, she uses the G word, but in front of the press, she does this whole kind of word salad kind of thing. And it's rather interesting that we're seeing her speak out, but it's not enough. And after seeing this humanitarian crisis that we are in and that we are witnessing in Gaza, it is abundantly clear that action needs to happen now. People are starving. People are dying. And war crimes are being committed. We are seeing all the imagery on social media. No matter what social media platform you use, everyone in independent media is talking about it. You cannot deny the fact that there are crimes taking place, that men, women, and children are dying. And AOC finally says something. Let's talk about it. Let's go and pull this up here. Huge shout out again to Case Study QB. Please follow him on all of his social media. He's doing some great work. Let's play this video.
You gave a very forceful speech on the House floor Friday about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You called on President Biden to cut off U.S. military aid to Israel. I think we have a clip of part of what you said. Let's roll that.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write.
Hold on, AOC. Say that again.
What you said. Let's roll that.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing.
Now, clearly not enough aid is getting in. Clearly the conditions for the Palestinian people are.
Yes, and that is very true. But I want to ask you, the viewing audience, because there's a little bit more to this interview, and I will be playing it, but I want to pause it here and have democracy in the chat, because engagement with the audience is very clear. And this goes out to anyone, be it a progressive, former AOC supporter. Yes, Trump supporters, libertarians, independents, you are going to be involved in this question too. Type 1 for, did you believe in the sincerity that what AOC is saying? That finally action's being done and we could see some pressure being put on. Type 2, no, this is all an act. This is a way for them to save their skins and still try and sucker in people to support the Democratic Party. I wonder how many 2s we're going to get in the chat. I wonder, because it's all rather convenient that now the G word is being used, that we're seeing the lions of the progressive movement starting to roar a little bit, but it all seems controlled. It's very clear with all the things that we're seeing on social media, especially with the lead up to the DNC convention, that Democrats realize that they're losing their voting base. And in Chicago alone, 3 activist groups that have spoken solidarity for Palestine, and each of these activist groups are anti-war, anti-corruption, are suing the city of Chicago because the city of Chicago won't let them anywhere near the DNC convention. It's rather convenient, but remember too that the Democrats for a long time said that they are friends with activists and progressives. And now they're telling them that they can't show up because people are very upset with the crisis in Gaza. It's just rather interesting because AOC and Bernie, that's their group, and they realize that they're losing people. And voter turnout for a lot of these primaries has been at an all-time low. Pretty pathetic.
Are horrific and much more needs to be done. Genocide is a word that has serious and specific connotations and allegations. It's defined by the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So you, just to clarify here, you believe the Israeli military, the Israeli government are actively trying, they intend to destroy the Palestinian people, and not that what's happening is horrible, but it's happening because Israel is going after the terrorists of Hamas who attacked.
Don't you love it how corporate media is just trying to twist this around? Because they realize they can't go fully against Israel, but they also realize that they can't do their old same song and dance because the imagery out there is so horrific of men, women, and children dying. People are dying. But here, let's listen to that question one more time. How good old Jake Tapper words it. Where'd that question again, Jake, about the connotations of genocide? Say it again, buddy.
Enough aid is getting in. Clearly, the conditions for the Palestinian people are horrific, and much more needs to be done. Genocide is a word that has serious and specific connotations and allegations. It's defined by the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So you, just to clarify here, you believe the Israeli military, the Israeli government are actively trying, they intend to destroy the Palestinian people, and not that what's happening is horrible, but it's happening because Israel is going after the terrorists of Hamas who attacked them on October 7th, and Hamas embeds within the civilian population?
So in other words, you can't. Are you sure Israel's doing a genocide, or maybe you're doing a very dedicated, detailed military strike against Hamas? And unfortunately, there's civilians caught in the crossfire. Let's see how AOC words this. You know there's going to be a word salad. I'm so sorry.
Well, Jake, you're absolutely right. This word is extremely serious. It
starts off with the word. It's very serious. Now you know where we're going.
It's one that's taken with extraordinary gravity. And to me, the threshold of intent is a high one. It is a serious one and is not one that is made lightly. However, when we look at the precipice of what is happening with a forced famine of 1.1 million Gazans, where multiple governments, NGOs, and even officials within the United States State Department have stated themselves plainly that the Israeli government and leaders in the Israeli government are intentionally denying, blocking, and slow walking this aid and are precipitating a mass famine. I believe we have crossed the threshold of intent.
She's being very careful because, you know, Mama Nancy is going to be waiting around the corner with a baseball bat ready to hit AOC upside the head. Intent? No, it's pretty freaking deliberate here. That's what we're seeing here. Okay, but she's giving the word salad, and she's not dropping the G word. She used the G word on the House floor. Not here with Jake Tapper though.
It is horrific. I think it is extremely clear, and it is extremely important that all people understand the difference between people and their governments, Israelis and the Israeli government, Palestinians from Hamas. But what we are seeing here, I think, with a forced famine is beyond our ability to deny or explain away. There is no targeting of Hamas in precipitating a mass famine of 1 million people, half of whom are children.
So, long story short, she didn't say, is this a genocide or is this a military attack? But she gave a word salad of the intent and how devastating the famine is and the military strikes are. But you're sooner or later, you can't just use that word salad to, you know, wiggle around. You're going to have to say, what is it? What is it? What is happening here? You have to use your words and say what you mean. You just can't just wiggle your way out, which is what AOC is kind of doing in this interview. But I will give her credit where it's due. Her and Bernie are saying it, but looking at my invisible watch, it's almost too little too late because people are still dying. But yet they're building a fantastic pier right there in Gaza with the remnants, the rubble remains of people's homes. People probably died in that in those rubbles. You know, because people can't, because again, Gaza is so devastated that first responders can't dig people out because we don't know how many people are still buried alive underneath the tons of rubble all across Gaza.
So I asked Israeli officials about your speech, and they say we are allowing hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza every single day. They're trying to increase those numbers. They have to inspect the cargo to make sure no weapons are getting in, weapons that would be used by Hamas against the.
Okay, let's be clear what Israel's saying, that weapons could get in. All right. Now, first, Israel controls everything and anything that gets in and out of Gaza. Okay. They're the ones with the keys. They're the ones with behind the switchboard. They're the ones who decides what gets in and out. So that means it has to go through Israel itself. You think someone's going to sneak in weapons into the food. But then again, too, when people do go to those food trucks, they get shot at. They get mowed down because people are starving. I mean, you'd be surprised what we are all capable of when we lose the comforts of Western civilization, when we don't have hot showers, food in our belly, a place to sleep, a roof over our head. You'd be surprised how people will start acting, especially if you make them desperate. And also the fact that maybe they're still strong enough to stay alive while the rest of their family members are dwindling away. And perhaps maybe it's because of that fast action and moving, trying to get flour or rice or any other kind of food. It's to make sure that they can get there fast enough so that their loved ones can, eat food. What's happening in Gaza is a prime example of man's inhumanity to man.
The people of Israel, Israeli officials also argue this war could end tomorrow if Hamas freed the hostages and laid down the arms. Do you disagree?
I do disagree, because when we are talking about famine, the actions of Hamas should not be tied to whether a 3-year-old can eat. The actions of Hamas do not justify forcing thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to eat grass as their bodies consume themselves. We and the Israeli government has a right to go after Hamas, but we are talking about a population of millions of innocent Palestinians. We are talking about collective punishment, which is injustifiable. And the excuses that the Israeli government is giving about what they are and are not allowing simply do not square with what the UK government is stating, with what international aid organizations are stating, and even what our own State Department officials are stating, which is that they are not allowing aid to go through. When they're talking about inspections, we're talking about US aid, the United States aid. And so I think that if we are to operate as allies, then we must operate in good faith to uphold the principles of democracy, which includes respect for human rights, and also proving the value of our democracy, which is that we are different than authoritarian, and we are different from other types of regimes with no regard for innocent people.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thank you for joining us this morning.
Now, while that all sounds great, here's Bernie Sanders now. Sanders, the Netanyahu government should not receive another penny from the United States. So following the passing of U.S. government appropriations bill earlier Saturday morning, Senator Bernie Sanders, I voted no on appropriations bill that the Senate passed last night, while hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children face starvation in Gaza. This bill actually prohibits the funding of the UNWRA, the key United Nations aid agency delivering life-saving humanitarian support. This will only intensify the already horrific situation in Gaza. So there we go. Listen to this. This bill also provides another $3.3 billion in U.S. military aid for Netanyahu's right-wing government to continue this barbaric war. The Netanyahu government should not receive another penny from U.S. taxpayers. So who's paying for all this? You, the beautiful American people. This crisis in Gaza, our government is there, boosting it up. The bill passed the Senate with a 74-24 vote at 2:03 a.m. Saturday morning, following hours of intense negotiations. Later on Saturday, President Joe, that's right, the guy who wants to return his soul back to America, signed a $1.2 trillion government funding bill to stave off a government shutdown. Shutting it down. Isn't that fan-freaking-tastic? And here's our good old Senator Bernie Sanders putting on the good show. But I've seen this before. I've seen this before when our progressive lawmakers want to dangle something in front of us and say, see, we kind of care. See, we do care. I wonder how AOC or Bernie are going to respond, knowing the fact that their good friend Joe, the one who they said is exceeding expectations, the person that could stop the evil Donald Trump, that he knew that Israel was targeting men, women, and children and civilians way early on in October. They knew. This isn't open for debate or discussion. There's nothing here to talk about. But hold on. Hey, here's Blinken. You know, the guy who, I don't know, is he human? Maybe, sort of. And Representative Gregory Meeks asked if we are moving closer to a resolution in Gaza. Are we? Let's go ahead and play this video. Shout out again to Case Study QB.
We share Israel's goal of defeating Hamas, which is responsible for the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And we share the goal of ensuring Israel's long-term security.
Now, he's talking about the Holocaust, right? And that was a horrific moment in human history. But we're witnessing crimes happening in Gaza, too. That's being done by the IDF. But you can't hide behind quote unquote honorable actions and then commit war crimes and think that no one's going to notice. It's already out there on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all over social media. Even corporate media can't protect the establishment narrative anymore. Let's play it again one more time.
Is responsible for the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And we share the goal of ensuring Israel's long-term security. As we've said, though, a major military ground operation in Rafah is not the way to do it.
Clearly growing frustration on the part of the administration with Netanyahu's administration. Do you sense that we are moving towards a resolution?
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. And I think that the administration has been clear. Number one, we know that Hamas is a group that means no good for Israel and no good for anyone in the Middle East. I think Hamas is also harmful to the Gulf countries. They would like to get rid of Hamas. And so that has to happen. But it's how you do it, and you can't have thousands of innocent lives lost in the process.
So it's always going after Hamas, right? But folks, who's dying? It's men, women, and children. The city of Rafah, 1.5 million people. Netanyahu has made it clear. We've covered this. Due Dissidents has talked about this. RBN has talked about this. Made it very clear that he is going to continue military actions on that city. 1.5 million refugees. There's nowhere safe for any of the people in Gaza to go to. They got nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide to. And this is still being allowed to happen. And yet you have AOC finally using the G word. You have Bernie saying not one more cent should go to Israel. But what comes next? Because we have to stop this before things get out of hand. Because if what I think is going to happen, I think that our government, the whole world, is just going to sit back, put its feet back, and still say, there's nothing we can do. That's what you can expect from our leaders. Our leaders are not these great mythological heroes that are going to save the day and bring in justice. They're corrupt, flawed, dumb people, all interested in maintaining their legacy and their power. You got to rip that Band-Aid off.
And so talking about and figuring out a way to get rid of Hamas without the deaths of thousands of innocent young individuals, mothers and fathers and uncles and aunts is what has to happen. One example is what took place recently. Because of intelligence, Israel was able to go into a hospital in the new and got several key Hamas individuals.
Key Hamas individuals. Now, wait a minute. Are you going to bring up the fact that doctors, nurses, and other people were targeted and hit? Are you sure those were guys from Hamas? It's not ever once that the intelligence community, no matter what government it is, would get things wrong. Never once would Intel get things wrong, right? Right? Remember Dick Cheney, the whole torture thing? Listen, if you're being tortured, I don't care who you are. You are going to say anything you have to say to make sure that the pain and hurting stops. Torture doesn't work. Harassment doesn't work. Are you sure the intel services got things right? Because chances are they were probably torturing somebody, and they told them that they were in the hospital just to make the hurting stop.
Without one innocent person or doctor or anyone being killed. So we got to look at that region, at that how that worked.
Okay. What about when the hospitals get bombed, buddy?
But also the end result. two-state solution was something that the Biden administration has been very strong on, because we can't.
This is how you know that the media is not serious, people. I don't mean to be pausing, but Netanyahu said he doesn't want to do two-state solution. His government said that. What are you talking about? They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. What are you talking about? No, they're not going to do that. Why are you bringing that up? Stop being stupid. Quit bringing that up and say, that's a great. To you, my viewing audience, I don't care where you stand politically. There will never be a two-state solution. Because Netanyahu said so. He doesn't want that.
Can't just go back to October 6th. We've got to change what has been taking place for 75 years in the region.
Very quickly, though, another complication here is the restrictions on funding to UNRWA. You have a lot of progressives very upset about it. Your thoughts? I'm
very upset about it. We had to strike this deal in order to keep the government open, but we know that UNRWA is the only one that has the ability to get the aid to the people there. So something that was a problem for me also, but I had to make some decisions, because you give and take when you do these budgets. So and I've been talking to a number of individuals and from other humanitarian organizations on how we can get resources to them, and they may be able to get resources to UNRWA or whoever else can get food and aid into the region. Absolutely key and essential.
Congressman Weeks, appreciate you being with us, waking up early to do so. Thank you.
Nothing's going to fundamentally change. And while there are headlines out here saying that AOC defends accusing Israel of genocide and floor speech, she gave a word salad. AOC, the progressives that formerly made up the great Democrat coalition, are gone. People are leaving the party. And I don't see good old Bernie or AOC marching in solidarity with the protesters. I don't see Bernie or AOC or any other Democratic politician doing that. But I do know what the DNC is doing right now, especially here in Chicago. So far, 3 protest groups have been denied the proper permits, even though they filed them, to protest the DNC convention, especially knowing how Joe Biden has been indifferent to the crisis in Gaza. The Democratic Party, the city of Chicago, is telling them they can't protest anywhere near that area. Out of sight, out of mind. That's what they're going to do. So if this is an attempt to maybe bring the sheep back into the pen, good luck. Many people are waking up to the fact. Voter turnout, pay attention. Voter turnout for the Democratic primaries, all-time low. In Illinois, my state, for our primary that took place this month, 20% of the voting populace voted. People are not enthusiastic about the Democrats because many progressives, I hate to tell you this, if you were tricked or bullied into voting for Biden in 2020, they didn't follow through with it, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are burnt out and angry, and you should be. To the people who voted uncommitted or Gaza in your primary, be consistent, because let's say there is some kind of peace solution. You do realize that the crisis will still continue on. Israel's not going to be giving up any square inch of Gaza. Netanyahu doesn't want a two-state solution. Netanyahu's been talking about continuing military actions in Rafah. These are things that are still ongoing. And the Democratic Party has been given a middle finger to progressives. And the people who we elected into office, who we thought were progressives, aren't that. So it's great that you're saying these things now, AOC and Bernie. Fantastic. Are you going to confront Joe Biden knowing that his administration knew about the crimes taking place way back in October? Probably not. Don't be a sucker. Don't fall for the vote blue no matter who propaganda, and question everything, because probably the reason why they're doing this now, they're making this show of being aggressive or saying the G word, is because they know they're losing support. Stay tuned to Hard Lens Media. We will be covering the DNC convention in Chicago. Should be one hell of a show.